Hello, I'm Bret Moss, and you're watching The Defining Moment for Creating the Culture of Conscience. Our guest today is Dr. Meredith Young-Sowers. Meredith is the author of Spirit Heals, Awakening a Woman's Inner Knowing for Self-Healing. She is a speaker, a teacher, and she has a doctorate of divinity from the Universal Brotherhood University. Meredith is also the co-founder and executive director of the Stillpoint Foundation and School in Walpole, New Hampshire, where she lives. She's a devoted wife, mother, and grandmother. Meredith Young-Sowers, welcome to The Defining Moment. It's really an honor for me to welcome you here to our talk show.
Lovely to be here with you.
Thanks for being here. Our topic today is the art of self-healing. And I'd like to begin by asking you to share a defining moment from your own life.
That's such a fabulous place to start, because in my journey, who can say they've met God? Probably all of us would say that in some way, but my meeting God was not anything that I was prepared for. Not that one could ever be prepared to meet God in some form. I was raised an Episcopalian, and religion had never really taken hold in my life. The thing that mattered to me was loving people. Loving people mattered. And I remember thinking so often, why do so many people hurt? It seems like everyone is sad or depressed or broken. Where's the healing? Where's the possibility of how we make it right? So what I hadn't realized at that point is what our intention is and what is in our heart. Actually, the universe often then says now and gives you the experience to understand the answer to that question. And so I had gone on a retreat, and I had gone on the spiritual retreat with my first husband, and he was very interested in spirituality. So we'd gone to Bob Monroe's Institute, and his whole experience was journeys out of the body. And my then husband wanted to have a journey out of the body. That was the big thing. And I went, quite honestly, to get a suntan and to sit on the deck and to have some fun. Spirituality was not a part of my life at that point. You know, this is such a familiar saga for people. They're just going along in their life, and suddenly. So I came back from this experience, and I had learned a very simple process of meditation. And I practiced it for 9 months. Now, that's a rather prophetic length of time, isn't it? 9 months I practiced this very simple process. And at the end of 9 months, I began to have this very strange experience of, as if I was underwater, as if all of my organs and systems were coming undone, were melting, it was very frustrating, and I thought, am I losing my mind? What is this? And what I realized in retrospect is we are being expanded energetically, so you don't get hurt, so you don't blow your socks off. So in an encounter with divinity or stepped up energy, you need to be able to move that energy through you. But this one morning, Bret, I sat to meditate and been having these really strange feelings for several weeks. And up in the one left-hand corner of my vision, I always would see this lovely little sphere of white or white and purple. And I just thought it was, I was such a neophyte. What did I know? I didn't know what it was. I still don't know what it was in some sense, but it was this beautiful light. So this one morning when I sat to meditate, I found myself taken out of my body. It was as if I could see the world of physical matter and people, but it's like having one foot in the complete spiritual world, and that sense of divine knowing and that sense of absolute assurance. It was the most extraordinarily peaceful and beautiful and total experience. And I knew in that moment that God was love. I felt in every part of me that God was love. And it was as if I could look out over the valley that was the human world, and this gorgeous mist that was this light of love. And everybody was so busy going around figuring out their life and arguing and talking. And here was this divine presence everywhere, and none of us were paying attention. And I knew that I was being told that this is your mandate, Meredith, is to understand this power of love and to use it and to develop it and use it to help people heal.
Wow, that is so profound and so amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I really appreciate that.
Yes.
Wonderful. What's missing from Western medicine beyond more and greater scientific discoveries?
Heart. Heart, and here again, this magical word of love. You know, doctors today are actually finding their way back to having heart with patients. You know, we used to send men and women to medical schools, and we told them not to feel. We told them that they were to be useful to somebody by not feeling. The fact is now what a patient most wants is their doctor to sit across from them and say, I hear you, I understand what you're saying to me. Let me share with you from my scientific expertise, but I sit here as a human being. I sit here with you. So that compassion and that humanness is what patients really want. Then they feel they can talk to their doctor. They can say, I'm interested in meditation, or I'm interested in acupuncture, or I'm afraid I'm losing my job. You see, what we realize is that body, mind, and spirit have to come together. We are not just a liver or a gallbladder or a brain. That what impacts our physical health, our attitudes, our beliefs, our feelings, it's not just our genes, it's all of those emotional, mental components. And gradually, we're getting there. Do you know, I'm really hopeful that we're getting there.
Okay, very interesting. Tell us about how women can begin the journey of awakening their inner knowing for self-healing.
That's one of my favorite subjects. I mean, that's really what the whole book is about. Because how many times have you heard somebody say, oh, well, I felt that, or I sort of sensed that, but I didn't pay any attention to it. And what I try to do is help people realize that what is behind the scenes is even more important than what's in front of them, what is invisible, because of course energy is invisible. And so we look at the end result and we say, oh, I like this or I don't, instead of what are the subtler factors behind what's going on in our life. And so I encourage women and men, I will add, to put their hands over their hearts and to say, if I can disconnect from just my thinking, which is usually my self-critic, how can I come back into this deep heart place and sense what Spirit's saying to me? How can I understand? And that's what I call deep knowing, inner knowing, that sense of beyond just the repetition of what we need to do or what we've done wrong or that loop that we're always in. How can we come back to that original place of creative thought and guidance? And so the practices are ways to disengage from your mind, and certainly the one that I love the most, called your spiritual aspirin, is just like that. You put your hands over your heart and you recognize you can take one breath. You can just settle back in one moment and say, what is happening here? What do I feel? What do I sense? But you have to get a little quieter up here in the worry mind, or you can't hear anything but do more, be more, get there.
So part of it's knowing what questions to ask.
It's knowing what questions to ask, and it's listening for the right kind of a response. Because the first question we ask, if I say, how am I going to be able to earn more money this month? A lot of people are thinking about, how do I figure this out? So the very first response is, well, I have to do this. Then I have to, maybe I should do that. Well, I could probably contact them. Maybe I could borrow the money. It creates an endless loop of worry, and we feel like we're strangling. We feel like there's no way out of this. But if you realize that's only a first response, so I encourage people, listen for their second response. Ask the same question, put your hands over your heart, and sense, what do you really need to get out of this jam? And there's a whole different level then of feeling that translates into words. It might be more peaceful. It might be settle into trusting yourself. It brings us right down to a place where we really can solve a problem.
And so, and obviously, by your example, this applies not just to the physical well-being of the physical body, but also to other concerns, such as financial concerns.
It does. It all, healing, we get sick from the outside in. And when people say things to us or experiences hurt us, then all of that's registered in the body. We think that we've handled it in our mind, so we say, oh, well, I'm past that. But energetically, as a healer, what I know is those particular places where we've said, ouch, settle into our body. And enough places places where we've said ouch over I can't find my own vision, or I'm not worth anything, or I don't know how to participate in this world, that builds up, and gradually that can tip us over into real serious problems. So the need to come back and be centered in ourselves and to be able to say, I can find the right answers inside here.
Okay, and obviously your book is a guide which offers many avenues to explore just that.
It does, and it has a lot of information in it for men and women, but you know what I realize? We love to think. We think and think and think and think. We love to think about this and that, but it doesn't really move us forward. Our creative genius doesn't happen just from our rational left brain. It comes via our creative right brain. It originates from our deep heart. And so when we can disengage from what we think we see and check into a deeper place, which is really the universe, divinity flowing through us, we have a great perspective, then a whole different way of seeing it. And just as you're saying, it doesn't matter whether you've gotten a diagnosis of breast cancer or prostate cancer, or you're worried because you have an irregular heartbeat, or your kids are on drugs, or your daughter has had a stillbirth, or all the things that we deal with as people. Where do we find comfort? Not just more information. We think we want more information, but when people pick up this book, they say, Meredith, it gives me comfort. I carry it with me. There was a woman who was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, which is a really tricky diagnosis because by the time you find it, it's often metastasized through the body. She said, I felt such warmth and comfort from this book that when I held it, I just felt like I had a new direction for my healing. So, it brings up the point that it isn't over till it's over. It isn't, we assume we have run into a dead end. We assume, well, this diagnosis is going to do me in, or I'm never going to get a better job, or I'm never going to pay off my house, and you see, we have to reframe that and say, I may not see the path right now, but the way will open. I love that. It's a Quaker phrase. The way will open. So when we're really discouraged and we say the way will open, it allows the universe to play in a different way.
It's a form of active faith in a sense.
Yes.
Practicing faith in a very active fashion.
It is, and it's so easy to do, one of two ways. Either we say, in sort of a Pollyanna kind of way, oh, it'll be fine. But in our heart of hearts, we know that's not true. So what I've realized, if we really want to change how we function, we have to use what I call a believability factor, which means we have to say to our left brain, are you going to believe what I'm telling you is really possible? So if I'm saying, oh, I'm going to heal this situation, and if my rational self doesn't have anything to go on, it says, yeah, right, So we have to give that part of us that needs to believe in something. So we can say, for example, well, I trust my doctor, and my doctor is saying, hey, you can heal this, you can turn this corner. Or I trust my parish priest, or I trust my motivational speaker, or my life coach, or somebody, and we lock onto that and we say, I trust that person. I believe what they're telling me, and so I know that I can heal my body. And actually it's very fascinating because statistically the body heals either when there's actual physical obvious healing, or when we say to the body, you're healing, I'm helping you heal, you're healing, that does, both of those promote healing.
Okay, fascinating what you're saying. What are the fundamental types of nourishment that you talk about in your book which allow for the art and science of healing to work together in a harmonious way?
We think about, as women many times, we think, oh, well, I'll take a nice hot bath, light a candle, maybe put on a little music, and have 10 minutes to myself, and that's called self-nourishment. But what I realize is there's all kinds of ways we can nourish ourselves as women and as men. But as women, we need physical nourishment for sure. We need to eat foods that are supportive of our health. We need to intellectual nourishment. So many times we only wear the hat of that I'm the breadwinner, or I'm the daughter or son, or I'm the parent. And so all the creative, beautiful energy of what am I interested in? What do I want to read about? What kind of shows do I want to see? What's happening in the world scene? So we need intellectual stimulation. We need social stimulation. One of the biggest healing components, Bret, is community for women, and probably for men. You have to fit somewhere You have to know you fit. You're not all by yourself out there in the moonlight. And we need spiritual nourishment, which means, and it doesn't just mean going to church or synagogue or mosque. It might mean that, but a lot of people walk out of that hour and they've not really even disengaged their thinking about what they're worrying about. They haven't changed anything on the inside, and maybe they've heard a sermon about what they shouldn't do and how they're not a very good person. But what I know is most important in spiritual nourishment is that to believe that there is a loving divine presence, that our very best is what is willed, and that goodness is what is intended for all human beings. What that does is let us reach out and see the best in somebody else instead of wanting to criticize them or ourselves. So we can realize that that reconnection to spirit is the basis of all healing, because we get sick from the outside in, but we heal from the inside out when we say, I belong. And whether it doesn't look like that or not in the world, I'm connected to that powerful force, and I can feel that and know that and trust that my life can go forward no matter what. So all those different kinds, body, mind, spirit, social, spiritual. And then we really realize that there's a lot of energy coming in to help us. And it's not just, I'm dragging through the day and I'm so exhausted.
Okay, very, very interesting. Thank you. How can attitude shifts bring about qualitative results in self-healing?
I put so many attitude shifts. I loved that when I was working with our in-house director, and she was saying, you know, Meredith, each of these chapters is filled with interesting things that I'm learning. And I said, really? I mean, I'm so used to this. This is my life, what I talk about and what I share. And she said, well, let me list them for you, the things that I learned just from this chapter. So she listed all of these. And we said, you know, that would be really a good thing at the end of the chapter so that people could say, okay, here's sort of the summary. So we said, let's call them attitude shifts. And so that means it doesn't sound as scary as changing your beliefs or changing your, it's saying, all right, I know I hold attitudes about lots of things. So if I change my attitude, then what's really going to happen is I'll change the direction of my life. And that's true. When we change our thinking, it's like when the astronauts and the major shuttles take off. If you change that orbit one tiny little piece, then you're in a whole different scenario. Well, the same thing is true of an attitude shift. If I say, I trust that the doors of my life can open as I allow them to, for example, I've just moved my trajectory ever so slightly, so a whole new level of possibility can in fact open for me. So it's absolutely essential that we watch what we say, that we're aware of what we say. We're not just in it. We're not just reacting to everything, but we're saying, I didn't really mean to say that. I didn't really need to be that negative. I can accept or reject that thought. I can accept or reject that thought for myself or someone else.
Okay, great. So in a sense, almost being like an editor of your own thinking.
Yes. And when we talk about being aware, that's what that really means. Because we're just, you know, as I was long before this first very powerful spiritual experience, I just thought, well, my emotions were my emotions, and what I felt was just who I was. But the fact is that what we feel is like the weather. It comes and goes. What's underneath how we just feel in the moment is the real thing. That's the real deep heart, creative energy that we want to be in touch with. And so understanding that underneath all of that temporary changing weather patterns is something we want to center on, that piece. And we have to practice it. Have to practice it. You know, this is the way human beings normally react.
Right. Can you give us some more examples of attitude shifts?
If I said, for example, I am worried that my doctor is going to give me bad news today, an attitude shift could be, my body is always trying to help me heal. I know this person is going to leave me in this relationship. They're not close to me, and I know that they're really thinking bad things. An attitude shift might be, I can allow loving thoughts to flow to me and unloving thoughts to dissipate. Or so it's leaning on the positive, and it's affirming that which we want, and that which is true is that we are not what we think. We are not just in this dog-eat-dog kind of world or kind of situation. It doesn't have to be that way. So I like to think about the mind people have to understand a little bit about how they function in order to be able to be aware and assess. And so the mind has two basic activities. The first activity is our personality self, our ego self. And that's the part that's always in opposition. It always says, you have more, or I have more. It's always this. There's never a comfortable moment. We're always having to do more or live up to more in that kind of a situation. But the other activity of the mind is of our wisdom self. So when we switch from just our thinking down to our deep heart, we're saying from this oppositional activity of just me, just my personality, we come to a place of we come to a place of all of us. We come to a place of there isn't scarcity. There's enough for all of us, and we can begin to realize that at a deeper level. Our little brain doesn't want us to. It's saying, no, you got to get your own. It's all, it's you or nothing. Not so.
Me against the world
That's
type
right.
thing. Okay,
That's
very,
right.
very, very fascinating. Thank you. What is meant by putting our spirit in the center of our healing?
When we are trying to change a situation, we usually walk just around the edges, and we try to take various activities. You know, if we're needing to get out of debt, for example, we call the mortgage company, or we see about getting a loan on our car or whatever. But what we don't realize is there's no peace of mind in that. There's no centeredness. There's just a lot of fear. So when we can imagine that source of love, that spiritual nature that we really are, that spiritual core, who we are, when a person says, that's really who I am, and I can center on that, it doesn't matter if I have a particular religious practice. Spirituality is about what we share as human beings, the ability to love and to serve ourselves and other people. And so that crosses all religious lines. So the ability to say, I am that power of spirit within me. And there's a calmingness to that, Bret. We come back inside, and it's like we can relax our shoulders, we settle down. It's like, all right, I don't need to be so afraid. And then I can have greater clarity about, all right, maybe I don't need to sell my car, in this example. Maybe I don't need to be scared I'm going to lose my house. All of our creativity comes when we settle down and center on spirit. Spirit is love. As potential, as opportunity.
So in many ways, we as human beings have an identity crisis.
Yes,
Is what you're saying.
We do. We identify with our personality, that activity of ego that is just me, and I got to gain 10 pounds or lose 10 pounds or earn more money, or, I can't share it, I can't. We don't know who we really are. We mistaken that aspect of our fabulous mind, and we need to go deeper. We need to go deeper.
And how would you describe who we really are as human beings?
Spirit. We are the energy of love. We are the energy of that same thing that I felt all those years ago, that absolute assurance that our place is assured, our success is assured. I love that thought, that we don't have to scramble to be something more. We have to settle into recognizing that we're more.
Okay, beautifully said. Thank you so much. What role does love play in the art of self-healing?
Oh, it is the number one component. When I first had this experience, I thought two things. I thought, number one, who am I to ever be trying to learn and teach about love? I'm just a regular housewife. I mean, I got great kids and a good life, and a very practical kind of person. I love to quilt and garden, and not a very likely candidate to be a spiritual teacher and healer. On one level, and yet on another level, I think that what makes us a healer is that we love people. We love people, and we want to do what we can to make it better for them. So that means, in the largest sense, we're all healers. We all need to see ourselves as healers, and the capacity to recognize that healing flow, and that we can be a loving human being, whether we like somebody else's attitudes or personality. Because loving is something that is a sharing of energy. I may not approve of or like somebody else's personality, but I can love them, which means that's what that namaste means. I wish you well. I grant you the ability to walk your journey in power and in wellness, because it's saying we all have that spirit within us. It's the recognition of that spiritual component within us that is, if we're going to ever prevent the the world from disintegrating in the direction it's going. We have to pull ourselves back, and we have to sort of all lose face at the same time. In other words, the activity of just me, and we have to be willing to say, let me also know about you.
That's beautiful. What I also hear you saying is that, in a sense, if we realize that we're all children of God, then God has a particular interest in each one of his children.
That's right.
And if we can learn to see one another the way God sees us,
Yes, yes.
though we may not understand on a human level that other person, but if we can imagine how God sees that person.
Right. That's right. And the idea that God, that flow of divinity is through our own deep heart. So we can have God's eyes every time we go down to our deep heart and we imagine the best for someone. As soon as we're not saying, well, how do they relate to me? Are they liking me? Or am I enough? But if they're saying, what's the capacity I have here to care about them without putting me in the picture? You know, I've found as a teacher, and I think this is probably true of all teachers, is that I try to talk to the next level of where the person's going. I try to say in my language and my conversation, you know, your success is assured. Your next piece here that you so want is really, you're right in alignment for that. So I talk to what they are and what they're becoming and what the possibilities are as opposed to the other. And it's like we lean into that. We want that. And we become that then. We become that very empowered new self. We just need at least one person to really believe in us, and then we're on our way. One person.
What's a message that you would like to leave with our viewers about the art of self-healing?
That self-healing is simply connecting with who you truly are, that power of love, and it begins with trusting your own inner guidance, that quiet inner voice that says, it's all right, I'm right here, you do know. Trust me.
So it's learning to listen to that and have that inner voice be a source of support and companionship.
And a stronger voice than just the self-critic that tells us we're never going to get where we want to get and we're not worth very much. It's quieting that one and bringing up the other voice that's really our own best friend.
Okay, beautifully said. Thank you so much. Your book is Spirit Heals. How can our viewers get a copy of your book?
Well, God willing, it's in all the bookstores, and they can also come to our website, which is www.stillpoint.org. Stillpoint.org.
Okay, beautiful. Dr. Meredith Young-Sowers, I want to thank you so much for having been our guest today. It's really been fascinating for me to listen to everything you've shared. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You've been watching The Defining Moment for Creating the Culture of Conscience. You can find us on the internet at www.definingmoment.tv. Thanks for watching and have a great day.